Hi, welcome to this video on elasticities. We're going to be looking at three types of elasticities today. So firstly, let's just look at where this fits into our curriculum. So this relates to theme 1, which is our markets, and looking at markets and how they fail. Specifically, it relates to 1.2.3, price, income, and cross-elasticities of demand. So what do all these products have in common? And you might have guessed that they are all elastic. They all have elastic features within them. So let's just recap our previous topic. Which of the following diagrams shows demand for a perfectly priced inelastic product? So have a think about which graph is perfectly inelastic. And a good way to remember this is that perfectly inelastic is like an eye. So it starts with an eye, so it looks like an eye. So hopefully you got that one correct. And then vice versa, perfectly elastic starts like an E. So it is horizontal. So graph A is perfectly inelastic and graph D is perfectly elastic. So our next slide, another quick test for you. The PED for rail journeys is predicted to be negative 0.8. This shows that the demand for rail journeys is perfectly inelastic, inelastic, perfectly elastic, and elastic. So have a think about what does this number tell us? So because it's negative 0.8, that means that for every one price increase, it's only going to change in quantity demanded by 0.8. So we're going to have a relatively steep line. Therefore, it will be considered inelastic. So now we're going to look at income elasticity of demand. So income elasticity, also known as YED, is a measure of the responsiveness of demand to a change in income. So previously we just looked at the difference between demand and the price of a product. This is demand and people's income. So the formula is a percentage change in quantity demanded over a percentage change in income. So very similar, but this time we're just looking at the changes in income and how that affects demand. So when the demand for a product increases, when the income increases, we call this a normal good. So for example, if my income increased, but also the amount of coffee I bought also increased, that would be considered a normal good. And it would always have a positive income elasticity, which means it would have a positive sign. They're both going up, okay? Income goes up, demand goes up. That's what positive means. They're both going the same way. When the demand for a product decreases, when income increases, we call this an inferior good. So my income's gone up, but what's gone down could be anything from bottled water, okay? Maybe I'm buying sparkling water now. So my income went up, but my demand for a product went down. Therefore, it's an inferior good. And they are always going to have a negative sign. So going different ways. So you can remember if both the arrows go up, it is going to be positive, but if one's going up and one's going down, it's negative. That's a good little trick to remember that by. So pausing this video now and writing these down in your notes. Please add income elasticity of demand to your word glossary or your flashcards. because this is a definition that you need to know, as well as the formula. And some other keywords here that are good to add to your glossary list is a normal good and an inferior good. The table that shows the coefficient range and the title as well as the relevance to business. This is a good summary table to write down because it shows us that whatever the coefficient is, it's given us different boundaries, whether it is inelastic or elastic. And then how it relates to business is that, for example, if income is inelastic, that means that the demand changes at a lower proportion than the increase to income. And if it is elastic, the price changes at a higher proportion than the increase in income. So let's just look at some examples here. So a normal good would have a YED of greater than 0. So increased income leads to higher demand. Luxury good, YED greater than 1. Increased income leads to a bigger percentage increase in demand. For example, a sports car. Inferior good, YED would be less than 0. So increased income leads to a fall in demand. So cheap substitutes, for example. And just to refresh our memories about the different determinants that we have, we did look at this in price elasticity, but in income elasticity, it is determined by whether the good is a necessity or a luxury. Because at higher standards of living, increased incomes will see an additional demand towards luxury goods because we've got more income, which means we can spend more. Therefore, all the things that we need in life are already covered, so we have more disposable income to buy luxury items. For example, perhaps a boat or a paddleboard or any other item once all of your necessities are satisfied. So it is determined by the income of a consumer. And poorer consumers tend to spend their money on necessities because that's what needs to be bought first. We need to cover all of our needs before we get our wants. As they become wealthier, the YED moves towards 0 as consumers are satisfied with the amount of the product and they start to buy other products. Normal goods that are necessities will have a lower positive YED coefficient. As consumer income increases, we then, like we said before, are likely to spend our income on luxuries. So these products will have a higher positive YED. So pausing this video now, adding some keywords to our glossary list. So necessities is a good word, and writing down that they are products that have a positive YED between 0 and 1. Relative inelasticity of the product will depend upon how necessary that product is to the consumer. So you could add in relative inelasticity, as well as luxuries. So these are positive, greater than 1. So how this relates to businesses, or like we also use the word firms, is that it relates to the standard of living. So wealthier countries are likely to have consumers with more disposable income, which means that they'll spend their money on more luxury items. Therefore, the companies in this country will produce more superior products to meet the needs of those consumers. So for example, in Qatar, there is quite a high range of wealthy individuals, therefore there are lots of luxury products. So there is a link that you can see there from the Guardian. Could you please pause this video, open that link, read the document, and answer in your books the ultimate rich and demand for luxury goods. So just read, annotate, and summarize how this article is utilizing elasticity. Okay, looking at the economic cycle now. When the economy is in recovery mode and leading into a boom, this is when GDP increases and total output increases, disposable income is also going to increase and consumers will spend more. When the economy is in decline, so all output is declining, perhaps incomes are also decreasing, consumers will spend less on luxury items and will move more into buying their needs like necessities. So as we get richer, we buy nicer stuff, and as our income lowers, we buy inferior goods. All right, time to check yourself. Have you been listening? Firstly, make sure you can define the term income elasticity of demand. In your books, please write these questions down and answer them. Number 1, in Italy, the demand for fresh pasta is expected to increase by 5% as incomes increase by 2%. So we now are 2% richer, and the demand for pasta has gone up 5%. So in the USA, the demand for fresh pasta is expected to increase by 1% as incomes rise by 3%. So let's work out the YED and compare between these two countries. Please make a comment on your findings here. Number 2, demand for small cars is expected to fall by 2% as incomes rise by 4%. So use the YED calculation to comment on these findings. Number 3, the estimated income elasticity of demand for gym memberships is shown in the table below. Explain what YED coefficient means and comment on their business relevance for a gym targeting new members. So if the income level is low and the YED is 0.05, what does this mean for the business? Another little quick test for you. So an inferior good, which is relatively inelastic, will have an income elasticity of demand coefficient that is what? A, B, C, or D? Another little quick test. The income elasticity of demand for a good provided by the firm is negative 0.7. What type of good is this most likely to be? Okay, so let's just have a look overall at the types of elasticity. So we covered price elasticity, which looks at the demand when the price changes. Then we looked at income. So how does our income affect the demand? Now we're going to look at cross-elasticity. So let's have a look at what this is. So cross-elasticity of demand is a measure of the responsiveness of demand to a change in the price of another. So here's the formula: percentage change in the quantity demanded of good X over the percentage change in the price of good Y. So let's look at an example. Price of a Mars bar increases 10%. This leads to an increase in the demand for a Snickers bar by 5%. So we would say that there is a positive YXED of 0.5. So this is helpful for us because if we raise the price of one good, is it going to increase the demand of another good? So if the price of broccoli went up, how much more are we going to sell of cauliflower? if Nike raised their prices? How much more of Adidas shoes are we going to purchase? If the price of coffee went down, how does that affect the demand of tea? So this is really helpful for businesses who have similar products on the market, and they could alter the price to see what the demand for the other good would do, and then that would also help their total revenue overall. So determinants of cross-elasticity, they could be substitute goods, complementary goods, or there could be no relationship. So remember that complements are products that are bought alongside each other, coffee and milk. And complements will have a negative cross-elasticity of demand. As the price of good Y increases, the demand for good X would decrease. So the price of milk goes up, the demand for coffee would go down because you buy them together. For substitutes, they will have a positive cross-elasticity of demand because as the price of good Y increases, the demand for good X would also increase. So substitutes are things that you swap out. So the price of coffee goes up, the demand for tea would also go up. And no relationship means that the change in the price of good X would have no impact on the demand for good Y. So the price of coffee going up is not going to have any impact on how many books I purchase. So the XED would be 0. So please pause this video now, add these words to your key glossary or your flashcards, and then move on. So looking at cross-elasticity relevant to the business will first attempt to change the cross-elasticity of their products. So substitutes, that is where businesses want to differentiate their products from competition. What makes them unique? How could they stand out in the market? Because this is going to help increase their sales, which overall will increase their total revenue. So they do this through advertising and branding of the product and trying to keep the customers buying that same product. So a business that has plenty of close substitutes will be less able to increase its prices. So have a think about what company do you always buy from and you wouldn't even change. So that's because that brand has sold you on its product. Complements. So complementary goods are things that go together, and firms create a range of complements to accompany their core products. So we see this very evident in Apple. So you buy an Apple phone, but you have to also buy the Apple charger. And now the new phones, you have to also buy the same headphones because the dock has changed. So that means that you have to buy all the other accessories. So we call this product add-ons. They're complementary goods that must go together. And then they do this because overall their total revenue is going to increase because you're constantly having to put those items together. So as you can see on the left, there's a link for you to watch. Please pause this video, copy and paste that link into your browser, and in your books, write down and summarize the video, and then answer the question, how does the latest technology impact on the cross-elasticity of demand, also known as XED? Time to check yourself. So the following table shows an estimated change in the price of organic tomatoes compared to non-organic tomatoes. As you can see, they're all positive coefficients. So using the information in the table, discuss with a peer or your group whether organic or non-organic tomatoes are substitutes. And here is another word to make sure that you've got written down in your glossary or your flashcards, the term cross-elasticity of demand. So make sure you know how to define it. So test each other, test two people around you. Can they answer that definition? Next test question. Cross-elasticity of demand measures the responsiveness of demand for good X in a change to A, B, C, or D. And lastly, which of the following statements is likely to be true about game consoles and games? A, B, C, or D? And can you explain your answer? Alright, so thank you for watching this video. Hope it's been helpful. Come and talk to me if you have any questions. Otherwise, I shall see you next time. Bye.